Education. I've been around academia for a long time. Did my undergraduate here at WSU, spent a year teaching in Mozambique at a university, and did my master's at Harvard, where I was also a teaching fellow in economics. But I've never had a press conference for a course before, so that's just great to see. Very excited to be teaching this course with Mike. We've been friends for a while now, but had the opportunity to travel together to Cambodia and Taiwan last year when Mike joined a trade mission that we were on, and talked a little bit about the class then, and it's sort of coming to fruition now, and it's just really exciting to see, and very excited to interact with students here on campus. We'll have just about 40 students participating in the course, which we're very excited about. We didn't want the course to be too big, because you kind of lose that teaching dynamic, but we are pleased with the number that we have, and it's just fun to be back on campus and talking about an interesting subject material.
Coach Leach, any comments?
Any questions?
I guess for both of you, whoever wants to start, what made you want to teach this class?
Yeah, I think really the discussion, what I could learn myself, you commingle the football with the counterinsurgency, and then I'm sure the discussion will be interesting. And then, also we got experts kind of in the field that we're going to have as guest speakers from one class to the next. An escape survival specialist, that trains elite military, and so that'll be exciting. Really, I can sit and talk football. As a matter of fact, when I leave here, I'm going to go talk football for 2 hours, but that's easy enough. But I'm kind of interested in what the others bring and what I get to learn from that.
Well, I think one of the many interesting things about Mike is his diversity and broadness of his intellect and what he's interested in. He's already written one book essentially about insurgent warfare. In Geronimo. Perhaps he doesn't have the same framework that I had when I was with the State Department in Iraq and Afghanistan, looking at some of these issues, and so I think weaving in some of what Mike already knows about subjects like Geronimo with what we're going to do with the look at the football, I think will be really, really interesting. Sort of how I came to the class was when I was in Iraq in 07 and 08 for the Iraq surge. I was an economics officer at something called Joint Strategic Planning and Assessment. So I used to help coordinate political and economic operations alongside what we were doing with our surge military offensive, and used to go with General Petraeus and Ambassador Crocker every week to see the Iraqi Prime Minister, and then also put together an interagency team to get Jaish al-Mahdi, Iranian-backed insurgents, out of smuggling activity in Iraq. At that time, the military started asking me to lecture on counterinsurgency, and I've done it since then. In 2017, I spent the fall at Sciences Po University in Paris teaching a class on counterinsurgency lessons based on Iraq and Afghanistan. And when I was teaching that class, I started using football paradigms to sort of explain some of the lessons. And what's really interesting about what Mike does is insurgent revolutionaries are essentially underdogs, and they have to turn strategic disadvantage into advantage against more powerful conventional opponents. And there are a lot of parallels from a leadership standpoint in terms of what Mike does with the air raid offense and how he takes perhaps underdog football players and gets higher amounts of success. So from somebody that likes leadership and somebody that has looked at these things, it's very interesting to spend time with Mike Leach on a leadership standpoint. And I think, if we can pull it off, what we'll do in this class is bring those things together and have a really good student experience.
What was the selection process like? We saw the 2 questions that students filled out. How many applications did you guys get, and were there any essays that stood out in particular to you two?
Mike went through the essay, so we'll let him answer that. We had quite a few, but again, it was kind of sudden. I don't think the word got out as adequately as it perhaps could have. And then the other thing is this is kind of a volunteer effort, both on our part and the students' part. So you got to be kind of interested in to be there.
Yeah, I'll let you address the number of questions specifically to the university, only because there's some things about how higher education registrar process works that are I think that are different than as we understand them. So I just want to make sure that they specifically address the registrar questions. When we came up with the class, we had to find a time that it worked for both of us, and we thought about what the numbers would be. Initially, there was some interest in having all the classes live streamed. We were concerned that maybe that would disrupt the kind of interactive learning environment that we want to have, and so I wanted to hold the class to about 20 or 30 students so it could be more interactive. In discussions with the university, they wanted to try to have more in the class. We settled on up to 40, and then this hybrid model where the first 4 classes will be in private, and then the last class we're going to open up to the public and have that live stream activity. When we set up the entrance classes, we didn't want just we wanted people that were really interested enough in the class to go through a little bit of effort, and that's why we did the 2 questions. The one question on whether the wishbone would work in the NFL. It was, of course, I didn't know much about that. That was the one that Mike handled in terms of the background on the question. And then we also asked, would the British strategy and the Malay insurgency work today? And the Malayan insurgency is sort of the framework for what we did in the Iraq surge, if not the tactics, but then the strategy. So it was really neat to see all the students engage in that question and answer that question. And then we have some interesting assignments for them as well, too, that are kind of along the same lines.
What should everyone call you, the students in class? Coach, professor?
Yeah, I don't think I'll give it too much thought, really. I pretty much do whatever they do now. They pretty much call me whatever they want, depending what mood they're in, and typically positive, but not 100% of the time,
Mike, has it been a while since you've taught in a context outside the football team?
I guess yes and no. I get asked to speak at a number of things, and so that's got some similarity. But as far as the whole classroom setting type of thing, I would say that it's been a little while. I don't know if you count a football clinic type of setting. I mean, it's teaching, and to be perfectly honest, there's going to be some similarities with that because my end on this thing's the football and attacking space and utilizing your resources. So, I do a portion of it constantly, really.
Do you agree with Mike that it's going to be possibly a natural blend, these 2 subjects?
Yeah, I think so. I've never. Everybody says that, football's like war. You hear people say that. I've never said that because I think it's disrespectful to war. But I think that when it comes to mobilizing a group of people and a number of people towards a goal or a cause, and trying to utilize all your resources to get it accomplished and maximize, your capabilities, I do think there's some similarities there, as far as how you, kind of choreograph the whole thing. So, and I think that's kind of what we hope to draw and illustrate, compare, and then learn about 2 subjects that have some similarities in approach, 2 quite different subjects.
It sounds like it'll have a bit of an improv feel to it, the seminar.
Yeah, and some of that's by design. We were going through our presentation last night, and we got a lot of interesting subject material to go through, and we also have this great special guest who is spent 8 years as a survival instructor at the Sears School up in Spokane. Is going to talk about some interesting things as well too, and we'll have special guests at all the classes. But the theme for this first class, if you've been following along on Twitter, there was 2 questions posed, which was why didn't Lawrence of Arabia take Medina when he was leading the Arab insurgency against the Ottoman Turks, and why did WSU run a shovel pass in the 4th quarter for a touchdown when when they beat USC in 2017? And what we think the parallels are is, again, back to this theme of this first class is successful underdog insurgents take strengths of their opponents and turn them into weaknesses, and we'll talk about some of the parallels. And Mike and I both 100% agree that no one in this class is trying to compare football to warfare. War is life and death, and football is a game, and we think that's evident, but it certainly needs to be restated again.
Will students get the opportunity to watch game film in class?
Yeah, that's again, when we were talking about our portion of this first class, I think we both have more material than we need, you know, the type of thing. You know, I got some film, but I had to be disciplined about cutting it back because I could go on for 3 hours on it, you know, and instead it's going to be more like 25 minutes, you know, so yeah, I'll have to keep an eye on the clock and probably whiz through it a little bit because, you know, especially first time out, it's always a little longer and more than you need, you know.
And I would say on the film stuff, I occasionally come down and watch with film with Mike, and it's fascinating to see the difference between what you see on TV in the narrow view, and then when then you get to see the all 22 and from the background, and then when you get to sit with the coaches, how they go into their strategic planning of how that develops. And sort of one of the origins of this class is it reminded me a lot of what we used to do in Iraq at the embassy, where there would be these discussions, and sometimes you'd have film and some other things that would go into, you know, what your plan is going to be. Again, it's a strategic planning process, you know, and what students can take from that, even if it's not in parallels, you take leadership lessons from that. How do you plan? How do you execute? How do you think through the strengths and weaknesses of an opponent? So all those things are, you know, really good leadership lessons. And, you know, again, if you're just a fan of leadership studies, it's interesting to see how WSU does it so well here with their coaching staff and has had so much success, you know, when you can see an endeavor that's measured every week and where there's real results and real competitors. So it's really, really a unique experience. I think for the students to get to see that and that thinking, it'll give them not just a new view of how football works, but also just how leadership works.
Coach, do you know if any of your athletes are taking this class?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. They're certainly welcome. I think, you know, there's 24 hours in the day, and they might as well spend it with me, you know, the way I look at it. Now, they don't always agree with that as they start looking at their watches and meetings or, you know, get the glazed look in practice. But, yeah, if they need a little more, they're welcome to come in there.
You went on this trip overseas. Is that where this idea came about? And who was the first to mention or suggest you guys do a class together?
Well, it's a long flight to Taiwan and Cambodia, I'll tell you that. You know, so we had the chance to spend a lot of time together, and I don't know when it first came up, but actually one of the got to be one of my heroes in life is a guy named General Jim Mattis, who's recent Secretary of Defense and was a Marine Corps general. Mike had General Mattis come and talk to the football program a few years back, and I had the privilege of being there for that. And I have spoken to Mattis several times since then, and every time we've talked, he talked about how impressed he was with the football team down here, with their questions in the program. And I remember Mattis being particularly impressed that Mike had written this book on Geronimo. I think, you know, Mattis told me, you know, what other football coach would write a book about Geronimo? And that sort of spurred some of the idea as well, too, that there are these overlaps, and even somebody like Jim Mattis is interested in what goes on here from a leadership perspective. But back to your question, who said it additionally in Cambodia? I don't actually know, although there are a lot of good stories from that trip in Taiwan as well, too. Do you remember?
No, just general talking about comparisons of it, and then you know, after, and there was quite a bit of dialogue on comparisons between the two, but you know, when we spawned the idea to do a class, I'm not sure when that happened, and then, you know, we threw the kind of the test balloon on Twitter out there, which I thought maybe there'd be around 100 that would take an interest in it, and there was 47,000, and so then it kind of took off from there, I guess.
Because of the interest, and you're obviously only able to have 40 students, do you see yourself maybe doing this again later on?
I wouldn't rule it out, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes after tonight. I'll have a better idea. We'll see how. See, if they all throw up their hands and walk out, probably we won't, you know.
What is day one going to be like? Are you guys going to be young and saying on Twitter, "Don't be late"? What kind of teacher do you think you'll be?
Well, I better be on time, it sounds like. We'll just introduce it, and then there'll be a football portion, the counterinsurgent portion, and then and then each week the guest speaker, and then I think hopefully we have the discipline to leave enough time at the end for questions, because the dialogue from the students and their observations is one of the things I'm most curious about. So hopefully we get a portion of that.
Yeah, and I would say on that subject, obviously nobody's going to walk out of this class, ready to coach a football team or ready to go plan an insurgency strategy. But hopefully they'll be introduced to the concepts, and then also introduced to the ability to pursue careers in that path. So it really is about the students. We want it to be interactive. We're bringing in all these special guests so they can tell their stories and can pursue that. The actual fifth class that's going to be live, we're trying to incorporate a capstone sort of career course into that. So if people want to pursue these things, they can do that. But so hopefully it'll be very student focused. And a lot of times in these things, you learn more from the students than you actually teach, as well too, in a lot of classes. So we're looking forward to that. And I think I don't know the backgrounds for sure of the students. Based on some of the essays, I think we may have some ROTC students in there that are already choosing to pursue careers in the military. And as two of our special guests coming in class 4, one fellow, Craig Whiteside, is now a professor down at Monterey at the Naval Postgraduate School. He used to be the head of the ROTC program here at WSU, did his doctorate here. And then we have an active duty U.S. Major, Garrett Stotz, who's flying over from Germany to participate in the class, and he's going to do a little section on deception and some other aspects as well too. And of course, we want them to impart that wisdom, but also for the students to meet them and say, hey, if I want to go into the military, or if I want to go in the State Department, or if I want to go into coaching, what's my career path to get into that?
Do any of the guests include former or current players, the guest speakers?
Not so far. Typically it's more the kind of the military backroom type of folks with some expertise that we don't have. Like a survival specialist. Deception. Basically, in my case anyway, nuances that I guess I knew existed on some level, but not specifically who was in charge of it.
I did have a discussion. Yesterday with a well-known recent WC football player who may be attending some of the classes, and class 3 is going to have some things on fourth quarter comebacks and how you both plan and execute a fourth quarter comeback. And so maybe it would work for this former WC football player to participate in that class. We'll have to see as well too.
Is there a goal to get this added to the history department or military science department, or at least show on a transcript so students pursuing this career can kind of showcase this course?
Oh, I'd be in favor of it. It's just, it's a little out of my control as far as that goes. I mean, they'd have to decide that they're willing to do it first, and then the other thing is this is kind of evolving as we speak. So, it's kind of grown and built the last couple months. So, where it ends up, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, there was, universities the university's been very good to work with on this. This thing did come, a little bit out of left field for them, and they've been good to work with. It was easier this year to leave it as a non-credit seminar that didn't charge tuition, as sort of a volunteer effort. In that way, we had the most flexibility so we didn't have to go through faculty senate and approved curriculum and all that kind of stuff that sort of is just not the key focus of the bureaucracy. We're not here for the bureaucracy of how it runs, but potentially in the future as well too. I think Mike, you might say something about the final class assignment that we got going for them.
Yeah. We're going to have a group project where they design plays. Hopefully, they learn some aspect of football with regard to plays, and then we'll review them and kind of recognize those that were, perhaps most impressive, and so that they can have a little fun and practice their own strategy and insurgency.
You've both proven that you're good at college by going to a number of different colleges. What was the hardest part about being in college for both of you?
I've never really left college. Well, leaving. I've never really left college, if you think about it, you know.
Hardest part about being in college, I had a hard time when I was on the West Coast or on the East Coast for graduate school, just with the time change of watching sports. It's tough to watch the Cougs from the East Coast with some of those games being late. But no, I really like universities. I think they're really special places. And when I was in the legislature, I was privileged to get to help run legislation on the WSU Medical School and to serve on the higher education committee and cut the cost of college tuition here at WSU and work on those things. So I think they're just really neat, magical, special places. Not without their own bureaucracy and headaches sometimes, but it's really a credit to WSU and to Coach Leach to step forward and do this class. In my discussions with President Schultz and Pat Chun and Mike, I think all of them would like to see increasing connections between the athletic side of the university and the academic side of the university. And I think what you're seeing here is Mike voluntarily taking his time to do this is a good bridge for those things. So that's really exciting. I just think one thing I want to say anything about the final assignment. So the final assignment, half of it is what I did in Science Po when I was teaching there, which is to have the students come up with some strategy for counterinsurgency and an ongoing conflict and try to say, hey, what should be U.S. strategy in a place like Yemen or Syria or those sorts of things. And so we're going to help the students think about that problem and then how they might address it. And then we got these 3 football plays that we came up with, which I'm really excited to see. One of the great things I think is really cool about having Mike Leach as a football coach is, of course, many of you knew that at Texas Tech, I think it's a great story that they didn't have a good kicker, so he took a kicker out of the stands and had him try out and put him on the team. And then one of the interesting parts of that Cambodia trip is that it ended up that my little brother came over, and he's an engineer at Microsoft, and had this crazy idea for a football play, this big gulp football play, and lo and behold, Mike ended up actually running it in a game. So I don't know whether it'll happen or not. I want to be hopeful that maybe one of these plays makes it into the game versus Houston, but it'll be fun to see what the students come up with.
Gonzaga is playing Florida State tomorrow in the Sweet 16. By now you've probably heard of the Gonzaga exists controversy that's going on. Can I get your take?
What's the controversy? I haven't.
You haven't heard about this?
No, I don't get out much. I watch film, sit in a dark room, eat power bars, hopefully a piece of fruit here and there.
All right. Well, to make a long story short, Jimmy Kimmel went on the show about a week or so, a week and a half ago before the tournament started, and said he does not believe in Gonzaga. He thinks it's a made-up basketball team just for March Madness. It opened the floodgates. Social media has gone crazy with it, and it has been a segment on Jimmy Kimmel every night now. Guillermo was in the men's locker room today, as dressed up as Sherlock Holmes, trying to figure out if Gonzaga exists. He doesn't believe it. What do you have to say to Jimmy Kimmel?
You know, well, Gonzaga is quite legendary. When I was at Pepperdine, they were the 2 best teams in the conference. Actually, Pepperdine was a little better then, and John Stockton played, and it was impressive to watch. The smallest guy out there on the court was perhaps the best player, and so then, but starting then, all the way through now, I don't know exactly what a Gonzaga is. You know, I don't know what that name comes from and where it is. But adding to the legend and mystery is if you go on the East Coast, you'll see people in gear and you'll say, so are you from Washington? They'll look at you like you're crazy. No, I'm not from Washington. Well, you know, do you know where Spokane is? No, they're just Gonzaga fans because they've seen him do great things in the tournament, you know. So, but I have run into, you know, the coaches on the road some and stuff like that. They're all great guys and just do a tremendous job. So, you know, I wish them the very best tonight.
Have you ever been to Gonzaga University?
I kind of driven through the camp. I haven't been to a game there, but, you know, just kind of driven through the campus, or at least I was told it was Gonzaga University.
So you can either confirm or deny Gonzaga?
I really can't. I really can't. I think there needs to be a little more research on that. I mean, so you're suggesting that it's a hoax that's won a couple of national championship and a ton of games. Yeah, you never know. It'd be exciting if that was the case. Two guys sitting in their garage thinking, let's put together a basketball team. Who should we get? All right, and then off we go, and they disband and disappear. I mean, that would be fantastic. And if they do that, I'm going to try to figure out a way to do that football-wise.
Any other questions in the room right now? Any questions on the line?
Yes, Coach. I'm curious what you can use from this class for your day job, if there's anything.
I think anytime you have dialogue and interact with people, you learn something. A lot of times it's unconsciously, but I think anytime, that you're pursuing questions and exchanging ideas, I think there's definitely, a learning and thinking process that exists. It probably helps with everything. I don't have anything specific, though.
Were you into the Mao's three unities of protracted war we were talking about last night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of that, you're constantly trying to do that. So starting in the locker room here. So, but yeah, no, I think it's all good. I think, but I don't have a specific thing. I mean, maybe somebody will have a better stance or something for some of our players, but I'm not real optimistic about that.
Other questions on the line? Anything back in the room? All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.